All right, so I'm live at the Red House with my good buddy Josh Ling, who goes way back with me. How you doing, man?
Good. How are you?
I'm fine.
Good.
Uh,
I'm happy to be here.
I'm glad that you're here. Maybe we could just start with bit of a rundown for what it is that you do in the art world these days.
Cool. Yeah. First off, I apologize. I will probably be the person that swears the most on this. So sorry to anyone who cares about that, and my mom. uh, um, so I guess I play electric guitar. I play electric guitar in a band called The Collection. Um, I also play electric guitar and write songs in a band called I Anomaly. I have played electric guitar with you and written electric guitar parts for Tyler Nail songs. And I do my own shit sometimes whenever I have free time.
Yeah.
I think that's good, right? That's what I do.
Yeah, I'd say so. Kind of an electric guitar. You kind of get around with the electric guitar, eh?
I yeah, I guess so. I think I went through a phase of deciding I wasn't gonna say no unless I really, really didn't like it.
Mm.
And so it ended up I played with a lot of folks. I played bass with this band, Philip Pledger's band, A Strangers, for a while. That was fun. I played bass with the Genuine for a while. That was super fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, just I decided if I needed I step out of my comfort zone, I think, and just say yes to a bunch of stuff.
So you're somebody in Winston who, as soon as I started seeing you perform, I noticed a difference in the way that you are on stage and the way that other people are, and like especially me as an example. I in the earlier days of playing at the garage or something, I would say I was a lot more reserved, and it was really playing like when you started playing with me and I started exploring new things that I started sort of pushing that boundary for myself. Sort of tried to step into the role of a solo standing front man who was more free on stage. But you've had that for a very long time. Like, where did that come from for you? Because I've seen you I've seen pictures of you hanging from things or heard stories of you hanging from things. I've seen you on bar tops. I've seen you just screaming into crowds of people. You're one of the best performers that I've seen in our area. Why is that? Where did it come from?
Thank you. I have no idea. I was telling someone this story. I think I I grew up in a pretty conservative religious house, so I didn't get access to a lot of music outside of that. But there was a thing that happened in like the mid '90s, probably earlier, with just the subculture of Christian music became had a lot of like punk and like hardcore and like um yeah, just I guess alternative things, and they weren't doing the we're a carbon copy of what's popular in mainstream media, which I think a lot of Christian art tended to do, still does, honestly. But the subculture of punk rock and hardcore were doing things that were like, oh, this is just good punk rock. And I just gravitated towards it at a young age. I think the first album I ever bought was a MXPX record, which is like a punk band from uh, fucking Seattle area, I think. Bloomington, wherever that is. Um, and it just resonated with me so well. The energy of it, I just think there was something about like seeing people perform that resonated with me. And it's like, cool, you're like jumping around, and then like that's an expression of this music. And so I think I always just kind of was like, cool, that's what you do when you perform music. So I think in 8th grade was the first time I went to a public school. I was homeschooled before then, and I went to this charter school. So still not even a public school, but in 8th grade they had a talent show, and I decided I was gonna just get up there by myself and sing along to an MXPX song, and they put it on, and I was wearing a hoodie, and I put my hood up, and as soon as the song started, I was like jumping around, like singing, and everyone was like, "What the hell? Like, you don't talk to anybody.
Yeah.
Like you like fucking draw weird pictures and read books in class, and like don't say a word. You have like one friend, and you're up here in front of the whole school, like jumping around like an idiot." And like ever since, that's just how I was. My first band in high school, I played bass, and it was like a pop punk kind of thing. And when I joined, I like learned all the songs, and we were just in practice, just standing there like learning the songs. And then it was time for my first show, and everybody in the band afterwards were like, "What the fuck? Like you were like jumping everywhere, and like, what are you doing?" I was like, "Have you never seen like a band before? Like that's what you do." Like, I'm sorry that y'all don't know this, but I've watched videos on TV because our internet, you didn't have good internet then, so it was just like, cool. I watched VH1, and like I've seen like videos of fucking Eddie Vedder like climbing and hanging from shit, and I'm just like, yeah, that's how you play music, I guess. It's like I watched Green Day like just fucking jumping into a crowd, and it's like, I guess that's what you do. And I think I never said, "Oh, you only do that when you play this kind of music." So I was just like, I'll do it to anything. I mean, I remember that one of the first shows that we played together, it was us, Michael Kinchin, Daniel Faust. Was it John or was it Josh?
It was one of the two. We did
remember.
do an early one. We did. Let's see. You played the Under Evergreens release with me.
I did play the Under the Evergreens release, yeah.
After that, we did do a New Year's show that John was a part of.
That's the one I'm thinking of. And yeah, it was just like, cool. I'm going to move.
Yeah.
Like I normally do, and I don't know, it feels right to do that. I can't express myself and play music at the same time. And I spend a lot of time making sure I can play the parts right, because again, the flip side is like, if you're flailing around all the time, it doesn't matter if you don't hit the notes right. So I think I do my best to do both of those things. But I just remember our first time playing together live, and it was just like, yeah, that's fucking great.
Yeah.
And I look over, and like John's like dancing. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
You're like moving the microphone stand, and like, it was like great. I think there's something about it too that's maybe infectious. I think it's great. I love playing with the collection because there's a chaos when also now we have 7 people that are all doing that on stages that maybe we shouldn't, but no.
Dude,
no died.
I think you're on to something there. I think that experience really tends to be that's the almost like that's the type of experience that I think can really immerse people in the high energy realm of music. Like I get really sucked in by somebody who's just sitting still on stage in a spotlight by themselves. That's as immersive to me as these high energy shows, but the middle ground kind of sucks. The just like the middle ground where it's just a bunch of people standing still and kind of like that's kind of bland, especially compared to great acts. I remember being young and watching footage of like Silverstein and Taking Back Sunday and bands like that, and Taking Back, like the lead singer would fucking swing his microphone around, and there was that one video where he hit his bass player in the head or something and had like tape a rag to his head while he played, and he just kept playing.
Yeah.
I mean, it was hardcore shit. That was just like, it was really impressive, an actually impressive sight to see. And that, when I was in high school, always spoke to me. I loved the way those shows looked. But yeah, when I came to start playing music, that felt really off limits to me. I just didn't feel that free. And really, it was like, I think part of the reason I love the way you play guitar, and I love your vibe, and I love you as a person. But one thing I really was inspired by was like the freedom that you seem to embody on stage. And I wanted that for myself, which is, I think, it added to the reasons that I wanted to start playing with you in the first place. And yeah, those shows when we first started playing, I do remember I didn't have control of it, you know? Like, I remember that funny time where you were playing and in the middle of the song, I grabbed your guitar and like muted your strings totally unconsciously. And that was just that's the chaos of it all. It's like when you're really letting your body go to this place where you're not totally in conscious control of it, you're going to let yourself be free. I rolled my ankle once. I grabbed your guitar. Like, I made mistakes sometimes. Yeah. But I really like that shit, man. So I don't know. It's just you put on a hell of a show. Well, in whatever you
thanks. do. I think, yeah, even in that, though, there's something real and visceral in that moment. Like, even if, I mean, you say that it's a mistake to grab the guitar and like while we're playing, and sure, technically, I guess that could be considered a mistake. But if I'm seeing a band and I see that happen, I will always remember that moment. I will always remember the moments that feel real and true and genuine, and that transcend the this is a performance thing. Oh, clearly you do this every night. And some of those things are cool. I mean, like with our band, we have moments in songs where it's like, oh, it would be cool if everyone paused here. It's like, cool. Yeah, that's great. We do that every night. But what doesn't happen every night is, you know, me bumping into David or us like accidentally getting tangled up and laughing about it while we're playing, or you know, okay, I guess now I'm going to kiss him on the cheek or whatever because it feels fun. And I mean, it's just, there are things like that I think, you know, people, I hope, at least for me, that people will see that as a genuine, true expression of something that is spontaneous and in the moment, which you can't get otherwise. And I think that's, yeah, you grabbing my guitar strings. I mean, if you did it every night, maybe that would be a conversation we'd have to have. It's like, hey, maybe pick a different time. But for that one moment, it's like, cool, this is a true, visceral response to what's happening. And it's just, yeah, it's fucking great. There's nothing like it any other place.
Yeah. I two questions came to mind. Do you want question A or question B?
Let's go reverse order. Let's go B first.
All right, B. I want to explore a little more about like the impact of the conservative upbringing and what the fact that was a part of your story apparently about music. Like, what did that do for you? What did that do, I guess, to you on a musical level? Did that why was that a part of your story, I guess?
I think it. Yeah, I mean, I had never heard a Led Zeppelin song until I was in high school. I had never heard a bunch of classic artists until way later in life. I mean, I think I fucking started listening to Tom Petty like right before he died. I think I think it just allows the things that influence you to be different. My parents weren't like just playing classic rock or whatever in the house. I think we did listen to John Denver some, specifically the Christmas album.
Pretty harmless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just really vanilla shit. And otherwise it all had to be under the umbrella of Christian music. And so I think what my folks, I mean, maybe it was great for them because they were like, "Oh, you're listening to this stuff and it aligns with our values and beliefs." But I think what they didn't expect was me to automatically find the most like aggressive and abrasive thing I could, compared to what they were listening to. I mean, it wasn't Amy Grant and Sandy Patty. It was like, okay, I'm immediately picking up a punk rock record at like 8 years old or 10 or whatever. And this is going to be how I view music for the rest of my life, through fast, aggressive stuff. I mean, even now I have gone back and I still listen to like heavy music. There was a while where I stopped, but I think it allowed me then to come to other music as a young person, like 18 or whatever the fuck. I think that's when I first started getting really into Bob Dylan. I think it allowed me to view some of those classic artists in a way that, and timeless works with a better mindset. So it's not just, oh, this is like music that my dad listens to, or like, we gotta listen to this or whatever. I think I was able to have like a musical knowledge of some sort, at least, that then allowed me to listen to the times that are changing and be like, what the fuck? Like, this is insane. I didn't know people could write songs like this. Or, yeah, just kind of listen back to old stuff and then see where all the things that I like came from. Like, you can't listen to the things that Dylan is saying and not be like, okay, this is what punk rock is. It's just talking about the bullshit in our society and pointing it out to everybody in a way that is, yeah, through a story or honestly through just a middle finger. I listen to like When the Ships Come In, and it's like, oh, God, that's so punk rock. He's just like, yeah, fuck you. Like, I don't care. Like, I don't know. I think the religious upbringing allowed me to find what I liked, even in a very constrained atmosphere, which I think was fine. I don't hate it. I wish that I'd heard Led Zeppelin before I was in like 10th grade, so I didn't get fucking made fun of.
Yeah.
When I asked who is this when Stairway to Heaven started, it was just like, okay, you fucking idiot. But or like, you know, it would have been cool to hear Hell's Bells before then, because that song rules. But it would have been great to love Tom Petty right before he died, because Wildflowers is one of my favorite records, and he's one of my favorite songwriters. So it's just, yeah, there are downsides, but I think overall, I don't know.
You don't sound particularly resentful about it.
No, that's one aspect I don't about my, yeah, I think I just found a ton of good art that I honestly still enjoy. So I think if I still enjoy the things that I found when I was under this kind of constraint, then I don't want to bitch about it too much.
But how were you finding them? Was it like in secrecy that you were finding things?
No, because at that point in time, Tooth and Nail was a record label that was really big. So that was a Christian like subculture. I mean, Christian. I did air quotes if you're listening to this. Basically meaning, sure, some people talked about religious things, some people didn't, but they just didn't swear.
Mm.
But you can have it under this umbrella that is like, okay, cool, my mom's not going to be pissed if I bring home, an MXPX record. They don't really talk about God. They talk about girls, and they talk about being a teenager, and they talk about the normal shit pop punk bands talk about. They just don't swear.
Yeah.
Cool. Maybe there's a line about God in there. The hardcore shit was the same way. It was like, cool, maybe there's some biblical references, but it's aggressive, it's heavy, and it's just as good as any other hardcore that's happening right now. I don't really care.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to follow that thread because, like, that I think is a pretty common occurrence in this state or this area, and maybe throughout the Southeast. I don't know. Just the stand against like secular music in many cases, and to varying degrees. There were examples when because I went to a Christian high school that was like totally like rejected the secular world pretty much, and so on my mom's side of the family, I think everybody shared a sort of like no secular music rule for all the young kids. On my dad's side, not so much the case. My dad is a music obsessed dude, and like music sort of 60s to 80s probably historian or whatever about music, like just loves it and was always obsessed with it. And on his brothers too, like there was never this sort of like country music is a moral thing or rock music is immoral, but in other cases it was. I mean, I remember many cases arguing with my family about it and sort of defending it, trying to get to the bottom of what was so immoral about secularism, what's so immoral about something. Like, I get the idea, if you believe in God, I get the idea of wanting to draw positive attention to him, but in every waking moment we're doing things that have nothing to do with that belief in many ways. And what is the difference about making music that whatever, like, observes some other part of life or celebrates some other part of life? Never could get an answer. And for me, I think that did definitely contribute heavily to why I create music now, because I really found that very limiting and very frustrating to have this control on my speech, this like these barriers around my creativity and stuff. And I probably do harbor more. I will go to bat with that pressure or whatever. Like, it's not that I resent anybody, but like if somebody were to try to have that conversation with me, I would happily engage in that argument about what secular music is and its merits or whatever.
Right.
But it sounds like you don't feel as stressed about it.
I probably would. I mean, I agree with you. I think it's dumb. I think there should be no. I don't think there's anything wrong with. Obviously now.
Yeah.
I think I grew up. Just believing in those things. Believing in the religion of my folks. And so I went to a youth group that regularly had barrel burnings of, oh, you have to bring in your secular CDs and we'll burn them and all this kind of stuff. And, I never did that.
You didn't bring your CDs in?
No. I didn't. I had a friend who did, and a few weeks later he was just like, man, I really shouldn't have done that. Like, now I have to go buy all these again. I was like, yeah, no fucking shit. Like, that's good music. It's good art. Like, I don't know why you felt like you needed to burn it. And I think as I got older into high school, my folks loosened a lot of that kind of restrictions. And there's no way to control what a high school kid is listening to. Yeah, I mean, you just can't do it. I'm going to public school at this point. I can drive like a little bit later, I can start driving. I always had older friends. So I always hung out with folks that were older than me. So they're going to come and pick me up, take me somewhere. We're going to listen to whatever they're listening to. So I think my folks just trusted me. I wasn't like super rebellious person. So as long as I wasn't like getting into trouble or anything, they didn't really care. I was going to see shows that I probably shouldn't have, at a pretty young age, just the places that I was going. If I was a parent, I would not be stoked that my kid was going to the places that I was going. There's these clubs to see these punk shows or, hardcore shows or whatever. And I just come home at night, whatever. I think intellectually I would have that conversation about how it is bullshit to separate things, and if you believe the things that you say you believe, then all art, regardless of its label, is glorifying something. And the old school folks would argue, well, if it ain't strictly glorifying God, then it's glorifying the devil. And I just think that's a bullshit dichotomy that doesn't exist in real life. Like, if you're creating something beautiful, you're creating something beautiful. And if you want to say that beauty expresses glory to God, then you should do that. Regardless of the creator's intent, I think is fine, personally. Mm-hmm. When I think something's beautiful, I think it's beautiful. I don't care if the person that created it doesn't want me to put some kind of greater impact on it. I may or may not do that, and they have no control over how I interpret that in some ways.
Yeah, one time John had to get a button sewn on this jacket, and it was a big to-do. We kept going to this place in Stratford Road. I can't remember what her name is. This old lady that has like this shop on Stratford Road, and she was just really funny, big personality, and we'd go in there and she'd be like, "Can't do it right now. Leave it here. I'll get to it in 6 hours or something." And we had to go like to a store and find buttons. Anyway, all that to say, when we got back, we were talking, and somehow we like music got brought up, and she was like, "I love music. I love music. You know what song I like on the radio? That song, Take Me to Church by that Hosier fella. Because I tell you what, when he says take me to church, that's all I want. I just love church." And we both, John and I, kind of looked at each other like, it's definitely not worth it, right, to kind of guide her interpretation of the song toward his expression of the song and what it clearly is saying. And we were like, no, yeah, obviously not worth anybody's time. She likes it because it says take me to church, and she fucking loves going to church, and that's good for her.
Yeah.
So I'll either ask you about your religious views, or I'll ask you question A from the previous dilemma.
Could we go A and then
sure
religious views? Okay, cool.
So I don't play bars. I don't play certain types of venues. And in my mind, it's sort of like I'm in this dilemma where I'm either on a stage it's appropriate for a solo standing person, or I'm trying to get on the stage at like a Ramcat type room. You guys I've seen play in a bar, and you act the same fucking way. Like, you act just as crazy in a room where maybe there's like 25 people that are specifically there that like sing along with your words, or maybe more than that. I don't know. I'm thinking of the time I saw you in Winston in a setting like this, when you climbed on top of a bar and kind of, did all this with people. Does that not feel, do you feel a difference there, or is it just sort of a clarity about what you guys are there to do? Like, that's what I don't understand, is like the room that I'm in really affects how well I feel. But you guys seem to Do you guys cut that off? Are you like, is that, are you actually enjoying that room as much as it looks like?
Okay, here's I guess here's a peek behind the curtain. I think a little bit. Well, first, for me personally, I remember there was a time. I mean, I miss the garage so much.
Mm-hmm.
I love Tucker, who was running it when I was here, um, and it is a place that I at times was playing every weekend of a month. Some like with different artists and
Yeah.
acts and opening for bands that are just great. And I think one time I Anomaly opened for a band that was touring through, and it was a shit night. It was a night. There was a free concert across the street with a local band that was kind of like a hero band
Mm-hmm.
for a lot of folks. So, needless to say, there was no one in the room that had that. Yeah, just no one decided to pay the $8 cover to come in and see us. And this band was from Texas on tour, and they were crushing it. Just like did not give a shit that there were only 3 people who happened to be the opening band plus like their girlfriends in the room. And I was so inspired by that it was just like, okay, you're doing your thing, and even if it is just practice, like you could have just stood there. You could have not exerted any energy. You could have just like gone through the motions of playing a song. But at the end of the day, there were 6 people in the room, and I just was so moved by that, and so try to go to I try to go to every show. Like if there are 6 people or there are 60 people, they deserve the same show. And I think that moved me a lot. I was listening to Bruce Springsteen, who is one of my heroes. I fucking love everything he does. He talked one time about how obviously they're playing stadiums and whatever, but he was just saying, like people did not have to spend their hard-earned money to come and see me. They didn't have to spend what little time they have available to come and see me. And so every time I have to give them everything that I have. Mm. And the band has to be perfect. We have to do it for as long as we possibly can. Because otherwise we have stolen from them. Mm. And I really take those things to heart. So I think, when it comes to playing rooms that aren't as fun, yeah, you get there and you do sound check. It sucks. It's like, this is gonna suck. We are on top of each other. I'm having to play guitar like this. I can barely touch my pedals because we're all kind of on top of each other. But at the end of the day, if someone shows up, it is, what kind of experience do I want them to walk away from? Do I want them to walk away being like, man, they don't enjoy what they do, or I guess it only is good for them when there's a bunch of people here? Or do I want them to walk away going, wow, I was the only person here and they gave me everything that they had and they didn't have to. Mm-hmm. So I think, yeah, there's a part of me that it's just like, I will try to put everything aside. That doesn't mean there are nights that aren't off. There were nights on this tour where I was like, I really did not have fun tonight. I didn't enjoy it as much as I normally do. It was hard, stressful. I couldn't hear. Um, but I always ask somebody in the band, man, I really didn't have fun. You couldn't tell, could you? Like, that is a fear of mine, is like, I don't want anyone to ever come to a show and be like, oh, you can tell that he's not having a good night.
Yeah, I I think like that part I agree with when it comes to specifically when it comes to performance. But I don't know. You tell me if this sounds right or wrong. But I also get the feeling that there's a sense like through social media marketing, through content marketing, even sometimes through performance or whatever. And we're also looking at this as two very different artists. Like
Sure,
your
yeah, yeah.
band, I don't know if you would agree or not. Your band sort of has this a consistency of what feels like sort of, if not happiness, positivity is a part of it or something. And I do songs that have a lot more direct melancholy and sometimes like statements about reality and shit that can be uncomfortable, I would say. So maybe that explains some of the difference here in the way that these things are communicated, like in every form. But regardless, I guess the question is this. Do the people that follow y'all's band closely, do you think that they get to experience y'all as like humans in that same way that have the dynamics of like sadness and negativity as well? I think that's what I'm trying to ask. Is that something that you
Sure.
think about?
I think if you listen to the lyrics, there's a lot of, most of our songs are about some sort of, whether it's spiritual discontent or cosmic discontent. I think one of our most popular songs, "Sing of the Moon," is kind of about being in a place where everything seems so grand and you don't know how to function because we are so small. I think a song that we played a lot on this tour that I was super stoked to bring back is a song called "Wedding Party," about looking at a relationship and realizing, oh, this is the point where I knew that it was over.
Yeah.
And that leads to divorce. And maybe that's a positive. I think, yeah. So I think there is a rawness and a realness that maybe as a concert goer you could potentially overlook, just the nature of, okay, we're playing live, so what's all of our fast songs, what's all of our upbeat songs. But I think we really try to focus on the dynamic of, okay, yeah, let's have some highs, but we can't ever forget about the lows. I think one of the things we try to do really well in our live performance is stating that even some of the positive songs, we don't feel that way about them all the time.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, by the way, if I can jump in, I don't think you have any responsibility to say these things or balance anything. Like there's plenty of bands that their whole thing is like, we want everything to be positive, or we want everything to feel like it's medicine, or I want everything to be fucking dark. Like the reason I asked that was like thinking about, because I guess social media becomes this sort of like miniature version of what we think that we want the experience to be like for people. And I do think, given that, I mean, everything you described in the early part of the conversation, like how hard it is to tour, how little money that sometimes there is in this, the practical elements of this stuff, and then on top of that, this persona that we have to have. Sometimes it's like putting the experience of the music goer first and making them feel like we enjoy the shit out of it. And it's sort of like I guess I am remembering conversations and moments in my life, moments where somebody's talking through a set and a fan of mine tells them to shut the fuck up or something. I love that. I that's a moment where they like, in those moments when people try to talk over my sets, it bothers me.
Yeah.
And I won't pretend like it doesn't. You know what I mean? I'm not going to be like, oh, as long as you're having fun. I think there's just, what I'm saying is there's a positivity in social media presence in the way that they talk about what they're doing. I'm always happy. I'm always having a good time. Like, I'm always fucking thrilled to be able to do this. I'm always grateful. And sometimes, you know, there's also a different side to that. When in all actuality, there's a lot of frustrating things, a lot of like really, really difficult things, and a lot of really vulnerable things about this shit that like aren't always blissful. And I think, and the reason I brought it up, I think, was more criticizing social media than anything else.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, again, I don't know how many times I've had to tell people or just kind of remind myself, it's like, this is not real life.
Yeah.
This is the best, this is what whatever person or business or band or entity wants you to perceive is normal. And that's just, I mean, it's not true. I mean, it's all a outdated marketing scheme that doesn't it doesn't work anymore. One, because I think people see through bullshit very quickly now.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of time to understand that social media is just a bunch of people's bullshit. My personal social media is my bullshit. It is what I want you to perceive about me. It is not my day-to-day life or reality, because honestly, I don't even want most of my day-to-day reality, so I don't want to post about it. That doesn't make me feel good. What makes me feel good is like, oh, I got my Christmas tree today. That makes me feel good. I'll show you that. Oh, here's the 15th take of me trying to sing this song that I really like. I'll show you this one. And I have spent hours looking over every single video to see, oh, I don't like that note. Like, there's nothing real about it. And anyone who says that it's real is trying to sell you something, or they are deceiving themselves, or they're just full of fucking shit. Like, there is nothing real about it. I think there is a hope to be as genuine as possible especially through a band account, any of my band's accounts that I am a part of. I think there is a hope that we express a genuine aspect of who we are. That does not mean that we are expressing every genuine aspect of who we are.
Sure.
I don't know if that's right or wrong. I think we try to sometimes show the hard parts. But it's tough, because I think the way social media works too, it's like, if I show you the hard parts, I don't want you to pity me. I'm not asking for your comfort or anything like that. So it's a fine line of being genuine and showing you what's true and real, what to show you to quite honestly advance my career, and then how do I show you something that's hard, but without trying to seem like I'm trying to get validation, or like, oh, I want you to say something nice about me, in a way that then just comes off as self-serving. And that's really difficult to do on the internet.
Yeah, that's hard. That brings up some interesting shit. I mean, there's this there's this dynamic of rewarding the whole thing. Because what I don't like about it is it all feels like manipulating people. Like it all feels like instead of having this artwork that represents who you are and like letting that be scrutinized by people's consumption of it, but they have to consume it to do it. It's like the whole model of the way this shit works is flipped, and it does feel a little bit like targeting people's like interests that are already established. It's really easy to make art that already appeals to people's opinions or beliefs or political ideologies or whatever, and make shit that you know is safe because like you're making something that you already know the majority of people that believe this way are going to connect to it because of aesthetics instead of because messages. And that feels creepy to me because it feels like through this social media thing, particularly through those that are still kind of, they represent idealism, like basically pretty much Instagram, I think is what we're talking about. It is the true, I think, powerhouse of these models, especially compared to TikTok and YouTube, which I think are still kind of celebrated for their rawness and authenticity. Like sometimes when I put up, one time I put up a video on YouTube that had some like vocal effects, and one of the comments I got was like, I love that the composition is shitty, but I don't like the effects on your voice. Like they ruined it for me. And basically saying he wished it was dry with a shitty composition.
Right.
And that would make it appropriate for YouTube. But he was like very supportive of it.
Yeah, yeah.
YouTube has become this place of like the rawer, the better, you know, we want minimal production value and like it can be tricky and fun, but not like, you don't want it to be polished and perfect. I think that's true about TikTok too, but Instagram is still like the world of idealism in a lot of ways. And yeah, so there's rewards. It's like there is a weird culture of rewarding people for participating in the joke of Instagram. It's like rewarding people. The more that you make yourself a symbol of an archetype that's like perfect and like, look how perfectly and happily I'm presenting myself, you get more and more rewarded for that. And if you do something real, if somebody were to like legitimately post like, I am really unwell and I need help, that would be really alarming to people. And while they might get help or something, that's like not the type, that's like the type thing that people get put on a cringe compilation for or something. That's like, you know, that's super not welcome in that territory of sort of idealistic representations. And that is also probably the most successful model musicians have right now for how to market themselves. And that part doesn't feel good to me, I guess, because it's like we're and it feels like a lot of musicians, like the tone of their brand is being dictated by a lot of that stuff. The tone of their brands in many cases that come to mind are all like positivity, idealism, and like peppered in some humility or something, peppered in some like, I'm very insignificant, but also like, you know, look how perfect it all is.
Yeah.
I think it's weird.
Yeah, I think it is. Well, one, it's weird that we have to feel like as musicians that we have to put ourselves out there all the time. You know, okay, if you're not posting every day, then whatever. Oh, it's, you know, it's not good. People aren't gonna remember. You need to fucking have a post on Instagram every day. And it's like, why? Why do I need to do that? That hasn't been the model for bands for a long time. You wouldn't hear about a band unless they were putting out an album or they were on tour and they happened to be coming to your state. Like, you just wouldn't.
Yeah.
You could go and find information about them if you wanted to. But yeah, it's weird. I mean, even just when I was growing up and going to shows, it was like, cool. I would hear about what a band was doing if they were about to put out a record if they put out a music video and I happen to see it on TV, or if I went to their website.
Yeah.
I didn't give a shit what they were doing.
Yeah.
In any of those other times.
Yeah.
I think, I think it says a lot about what we want this celebrity and faux celebrity culture that social media has created and now has told everyone that they are a part of. And it's like, you have no reason to be a part of celebrity culture. Like, I have no reason to be a part of celebrity culture. No one gives a shit.
Yeah.
Chris and I were talking the other day because we were trying to, that was really stupid, but we were trying to find a picture of what our Christmas decorations looked like last year because we were decorating for Christmas. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, let me look on Instagram, because I definitely took a picture of it and posted it, because again, this is like my ideal, like, oh, look at my house. It's very pretty. We definitely didn't argue about where to put the Christmas tree for the past 2 hours. And I was like, oh, I've maybe posted, like, it took me no time to find it because I've maybe posted like 12 things.
Yeah.
Since last Christmas. And I was like, great. I fucking love that. I don't care. Like, it's great. If I don't have anything important to say, then why say it? I think that about businesses and brands too. I think especially with brands on social media, like, no one cares. It is not important.
Yeah.
If you're not contributing to or providing value to the people that you are marketing to, then just don't do it.
Yeah.
It's not relevant to anyone's life. It's not important. No one cares what stupid fake holiday it is. Oh, it's National Talk. Like, no one gives a fuck about that. Like, you are not adding to the conversation. You're not adding value to someone's life.
Yeah.
So just don't do it.
Yeah, I think that's why content marketing is blowing up so much, because that's kind of, I mean, that's why so many people have either YouTube videos or podcasts, because content is more interesting. Even if it's, I was talking to a buddy of mine the other day, and he said something. We were talking about this podcast, and he was expressing like a lot of support for it and stuff, and talking about what he wants to do with his own. And we landed in this place that was like, yeah, it's really interesting that, like, what people seem to respond positively to now. Some people like your podcasts, like Serial or whatever, that are like a long story that go on for a long time. But a lot of really major, significant podcasts are just raw conversations like this one right now, that are natural and that are like unscripted and undefined. Like, it's not an agenda, just a normal conversation. And we were like, yeah, it's weird that we've done this circle in social media where now what we want from it is just like what we have the option to have in everyday real life. Like, have a sit down and have a conversation with somebody and just listen to that. It's interesting that that's been produced out of all this stuff. Content marketing seems to be, a lot more worthwhile to people than just, a lot more worthwhile to consumers. But I've also seen, I guess the question is whether or not we're beholden to these platforms, because the message just bombarded all day fucking long is just, this is how it works now. This is what you have to do.
Right.
You have to put out something. Ideally, what you would do is have something come out on every platform every 5 minutes or something, every hour. I think actually more realistically, you would tweet something every hour, and you would have something going on every platform every hour or two. That's obviously not realistic for most people who are just trying to, like, make good shit and have an audience for it. But
right.
The message is that, like, this is how you win the algorithm. It has nothing to do with what you make. Just like we see in so many scandalous sort of like internet personality creator people. Mm-hmm. it's not always about what you make. It's not about what you make being a positive thing in the world. It's about it circulating and like and continuing to like double down on that more and more and more and more. So are we beholden to that truly? Are we beholden to that cycle as creators, as bands, as brands, whatever the fuck we are? Is that the only way to function and to like, because if you don't do this shit, if you don't subscribe to these ideas, now you are a part of a band that there's a separate brand there. So you as an individual don't have to do that necessarily.
Right.
But is your band beholden to this idea of the algorithmic cycle that you have to be a part of?
I think there are ways to do it on your own terms. We definitely don't post every couple of hours. I mean, it's once a day, sometimes not that much. I think the unfortunate side is you can't ignore it.
Yeah.
It's not going to go away. I think in some ways it is the best way to communicate with your audience. And I don't necessarily think it's all bad.
Right.
I think the fact that I am able to communicate, or we are able to communicate with our audience kind of whenever we want to, about whatever we want, is really interesting. And it doesn't rely on everyone being subscribed to our email list, which we would like everyone to be.
What if you had 7 billion people on your email list?
If they all opened it, that'd be amazing.
You know, only 10% probably would open it.
Yeah, well, I mean,
I
would take 10%.
That's not bad.
Take 10% of that number. If you are listening to this and you like a band, join their fucking email list, please,
that's
open
fair.
them.
Yeah.
A lot of cool stuff comes in there.
Then again, I get I don't want to mix messages. You're right, but also I've been bored by a lot of emails, but whatever. Yes. It just really helps.
Even if you
out.
don't read it, just open the fucker. Like, just do it.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, I don't know what the right answer is. I don't know if there is one, and I don't know what I think about it.
Yeah, man.
I think.
Let me just say, I worry sometimes that because of how much shit I talk about social media on these things lately, I'm not trying to come from a place where I'm blind to the benefits that there are. I mean, there's so many more self-made, like, sustained careers now than there were 15 years ago because of social media. There's definitely benefits to it. I like being able to engage with my audience, though. As an artist, I probably am a bit more private as a person. I don't really want to share every part of my life. It kind of like, that's not my craft. My craft is not look at my tacos. My craft is like listen to the song I made, and I don't make a song every goddamn day. So there's only so much I can do. I don't think of I'm not a fucking celebrity person that's just like paparazzi trying to see me at the pool. I would never be that. I'm just a fucking musician, and that's what I share with people. So I'm glad that social media gives me the ability to do that. I think the reason I keep fucking bringing it up like this is I'm just genuinely curious how we navigate this stuff, because like we're in this new territory where you have to decide between, are you going to like bet on the old models and try to find your way into the industry that way, or are you going to like basically treat your social media accounts like your full-time job until you generate enough of a following that like every goddamn post you make has the potential to make you like a couple $100. I mean, one of my favorite comedians in the world, I just started following him on Instagram the other day because I don't really follow celebrity people that much, but I wanted to see what he was up to. Almost all of his ads are like sponsors, and it's so funny because he probably makes like $3,000 off of each thing he posts on Instagram or something. But that's what he does. He has a podcast. His Instagram posts are all like sponsorship and like product reviews or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so this idea that I'm getting to experience the reality of this person who I like really isn't there. It's really, unless it's in his podcast, which is all still riddled with product placement stuff. Even through his social media, I'm really experiencing a lot of advertising because that's how people are making money, by generating a large audience in their social media. It used to be different from that, and anyway, so like I said, it's not that I hate social media. It's just that there's a lot of real curiosity on my part about like, well, what the fuck do we do to try to sustain things? Because my idea for what that was, the answer to that question 5 years ago, probably 6 years ago when you and I met, it's probably drastically different now than it was then. So, so I'm just trying to learn from other people.
Yeah. You know? I mean, and I think there's a myth too about what making it in the industry looks like and how you get there. I think, you know, I think I hear about independent bands that are like doing great and selling tons of records and, you know, playing these huge places. It's like, cool, yeah, but they're independent, air quotes, to some degree, but they probably all have backdoor label deals. They probably all benefit from those that marketing money. They just have structured their business differently. I think there's this idea that, oh, someone's just going to hear my record and then I'll be famous. It's like no one gives, like, yeah, maybe that was true for like fucking Johnny Cash, but that's not how the world works anymore.
Right.
And if you think that, I'm really sorry, but it's not gonna. There is such a small chance that will ever happen. You know, I think what record labels want to see and what industry folks want to see to make it to whatever level you're trying to make it is that you have put in a shit ton of work. You have an extensive fan base in a lot of the places where you are. You can make money on your own, and they want to see how they can make money off of you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's bad necessarily. It's a business. That's what businesses do. They figure out how they can make money off of somebody else. It's just the way we have set up our society, unfortunately, in some ways. And so I think, like, yeah, unfortunately now, social media has become a place where you can try, if you want to gain a following or present yourself in a certain way. I think you have to be careful because, there's bands that I've followed and have seen that then I look at their social media and I'm like, how the fuck do you have like 200,000 followers? It's like, oh, okay. Well, let's look at a post. It's like, cool, you had 26 likes on this. Okay, you paid for it.
That
Fine.
part really bothers me, man. That part really bothers me.
But you know what else? Everyone can see that. They can see that you paid for it, and you aren't going to ever get a return that you're hoping for. You're hoping that, okay, if I buy all these followers, then that'll get me more recognition. But people are like, businesses are smart. And people are smart, and so they will look and see how much engagement do you have.
That's true on one level, particularly on Instagram. Also, Facebook is really confusing now. Like, I don't know what happened, what they've changed. It feels like a decent amount of social media, maybe the algorithmic stuff, has changed over the last short while, like 4 or 5 years, something like that.
Most definitely.
Large, like companies with large followings, like American Songwriter, for example, has a pretty large following on Facebook and shit like that, and gets like 3 likes, and they post like probably 100 posts in every day.
Yeah.
That could be why. I don't know what their deal is. They fucking suck at social media, but and they kind of suck in more ways than that, to be honest. They just suck a lot in every way now. But anyway, they get 0 engagement in the shit they post, and I was just looking at it because their shit pops up on my Facebook all the time, and I'm just like kind of embarrassed at how little engagement they get. They're a large company with like an actual large following they didn't pay for, so that's a weird part of the puzzle. Then on Instagram, yeah, there's people who have I think anywhere from 3 to 10% is like really good engagement on Instagram, and there's people who have an ungodly following who get like 0.01% engagement or less than that. I mean, huge disparities. Clearly, they maybe bot followers, BOT followers, but I think the thing I dislike the most is that now you can do this with Spotify as well. You can pay to get more visible on Spotify, and so what scares me is it's almost become the business of artists buying fame.
Right.
That's what the music industry it feels like right now.
Pay to play, baby.
Musicians buying popularity that they don't end up getting paid for.
Yeah.
And it's like, what the fuck does that mean? Why are we doing this? Even as a record, I shouldn't say this because it's very confusing, but I feel conflicted as a recording engineer sometimes, charging artists money to record music that no one's going to pay to listen to. And I'm like, I feel bad for other artists who have to pay to record, because I'm like, God damn it. I wish somehow that my time wasn't valuable. I wish somehow I could like just do this nice, right? And just be nice. Yeah. I mean, I do this as part of my as part of my income, but like it's so strange to me that now, yeah, like I say, the art industry, the music industry has become artists buying their own fame. And if you can't do that, I've never paid for Spotify exposure. I never planned to pay for any Spotify exposure. I don't like that shit, man.
Yeah. I mean, I hate it too. I think, again, I think, and I think there are aspects of this that have been in the music industry for a while. I think if you look at the way some promoters run shows, it's like, cool, if you sell enough tickets, then you can be on this show. And then we'll take some of the money from the tickets that you sold and give it back to you, maybe. That's a big thing that I dealt with when iAnomaly was just getting started, and the Greensboro music scene was a big thing there for a bunch of venues. I was like, no, I'm not fucking doing that. Like, people should pay to see this art if they want to. I shouldn't have to pay to perform my art.
Right.
And I'm not going to do that. I would rather show up and waste my time by playing for nobody and not getting paid than to pay. I've spent so much money in this to have this band even exist already.
Yeah.
And time. I'm not going to then pay money or try to hand sell tickets to my friends just to be able to play. Like, I'll just play at a shittier bar.
Yeah.
And have fun and maybe not make any money. And maybe I paid the bartender in order to play because I bought 4 beers, but at least I got to drink those beers, I guess. So I think it's just similar, man. I think eventually, either one, that will go away. 2, it's unsustainable for artists, and I pray to God they stop doing it. another aspect is I think, again, people will see through that. I think it's,
Yeah.
again, the whole bullshit thing. People can sense bullshit. They know when you're trying to sell them something, whether it's a product or it is, I'm trying to sell you that I'm more famous than I am. I think
it's just that I believe that there's some truth to that, man. And I do think that ultimately solving these problems is going to come down to consumers. I think that's like honestly why our art scene and the art scene throughout the region and maybe the country is kind of suffering, because like this whole thing has gotten boring. Like how many people want to be musicians is boring. How many people want to play the same venues and do the same show or whatever. A lot of music is kind of in a boring state. It's in a sort of stagnant state right now. So it's not very surprising when all of a sudden somebody, like whatever, when somebody's just being a musician or playing in a bar or something. But while I think it will come down to consumers, like there's this band that I played with at the garage forever ago that have just blown the fuck up, and they're very silly and very like there's nothing real there. They're just a fucking pair of kids that like all I am is music, and they're playing big rooms, and they're playing to large amounts of people, and their engagement is out of control. Like they're really killing the game. And they're the perfect example of somebody who's selling kind of a under incubated product. I mean, I'm not talking shit. It's like they have definitely a very energetic, cool act. It's just like, it's definitely a knockoff type act. It's definitely an act that has a lot in common with that you can definitely see who their influences are just from like listening to them. So it's all great. I'm happy for them. I'm just saying, I think we still see the market dictating, the market still responding to a lot of that shit that we're kind of talking about. And like, I can think of a few examples where, did you ever see these things where like some billionaire's kid would start a YouTube channel, and like the first day they started it and put up one video that was like super edited, they just end up with like 1 million subscribers in one day or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
That's 1 million people or whatever. That's what the market is also producing. Mm-hmm. So while I guess I get the feeling sometimes like, while people can see through the bullshit, what they're saying is, okay, I can see through the bullshit now. Either make it worth my while, and I'll fucking if you sell it well enough, I'll sign up for the bullshit. Mm-hmm. I can see what's going on, but fuck it, I'll do it. Just make it entertaining, rather than fuck the bullshit. That's the hi hat.
The hi hat. Yeah, I mean, I think there's. Here's the thing. I think there's tiers to it, right? Like, I am a person that loves, I fucking love superheroes. I love superhero movies. I love reading comic books. I think there is an element of it that I understand that they are they're selling me the same thing every time. Mm-hmm. When I go see a Marvel movie, which I will go see every Marvel movie, I know what it's going to be. There are times when it surprises me and it rises above just the bubble gum. But I fucking love it either way. I enjoy it and I know what I'm getting. I also love like weird film shit. Like I think there's tiers, right? So it's like, cool, I can love this mass produced, we are trying to appeal to the broadest sense of the population as we possibly can so that we can take their money. They are taking my money every time. I love it. And I think then there are things that then I will watch and I'm like, okay, this is definitely feeding an artistic uh, side to myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting a value that is different. And I think there's music media that I consume that is I feel like can be both of those things at the same time. And I think the difference is uh here's someone who I'm trying to reach the broadest group of people that I can, so I'm going to, whether it's malicious or money grabbing or this is just genuinely how they want to express their art and themselves, they're going to try to do that, and it's going to look a certain way, it's going to sound a certain way, and it's going to be presented in a certain way. And I think there are other folks who are like, cool, I want to create in the way that I find most beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
If other people also find that beneficial, then I want to find those people, and hopefully they will invest some of their time into what I'm doing. And I think you can be successful in both of those things. And successful, I mean, provide for yourself in a way that is comfortable to how you want to exist in the world.
Yeah.
I think there's a certain aspect of just knowing what you want out of your artistic endeavor, and maybe just taking maybe it is that I want to emulate this bubblegum thing and see if I can become the next whatever, I don't know, whoever it is. And I think then there's just like, cool, I want to write these meaningful songs that mean a lot to me. I want to present them to folks and hope that they also can relate to them. And maybe that means, you're playing medium-sized rooms, or you're just doing the blue-collar kind of musician thing, where you're still working a lot in music and you're getting paid for it. But are you going to be doing Madison Square Garden? Probably not. But not everybody has to do that.
Yeah. I think that is a lot of it for me, is just what has the power. And I think right now platforms have the power and artists have no power, and a lot of artists feel like they have no say, and like there's no way for them to participate in anything or to share their shit or to like be relevant or these different things. There's no way to function as an artist without subscribing to these things that they don't want to subscribe to. I mean, that's definitely part of how I feel. I like certain platforms. I like fucking can't stand the idea of other ones. And so it's a struggle all the time. But speaking of Marvel movies, religion, but
Nice. That was a good segue.
I think we connected in a nice way when we first met. I felt like we had a lot in common and stuff. And one of those things I think was this subject. I think we both had come from one religious view that we had changed from, found ourselves somewhere different. And I think we've probably found ourselves in different places by now. And I think that's cool. But I guess I was just wondering now, at this stage in your life, having come from something that was maybe more, I don't know, serious, like maybe coming from an upbringing where you were encouraged to be very committed to a particular religion, and then where you and I landed at one point, which was very the opposite of that. Where have you found yourself as of now?
Maybe I'll just walk through kind of where I've been, and I think that'll help illuminate where I am now a little bit. I'll do this very briefly.
No, that's great.
I grew up in a, I guess the right term would be white evangelical home. I believed all of those things that most white evangelicals believe. up until I was probably 19 or so. I think I then started to have uh, thoughts that maybe didn't coincide with the belief that most, especially in the South, folks in church believed. I had a friend who was gay, watched them get kicked out of our youth group. I was very confused by that, didn't understand why that would be the case. I saw them treated really poorly when then they wanted to come back to the youth group and had to make a public apology in front of everybody. I thought that was the most fucked up thing I've ever seen in my life. I also started to realize that political viewpoints are more nuanced than just whether or not you believe in abortion or not. So I think all these things started to change what I viewed or how I viewed religion, because the way our country is that they become so wrapped up together very quickly in evangelical spaces. So if you believe that someone who is gay should be able to live their life however they want, that also means that you can't believe in Jesus for some reason. So anyways, I quickly learned that that wasn't the case for myself. Then as I grew up, I was still involved in a church. I was leading Sunday morning worship at the church that I grew up in. And then
You were leading it?
Leading it, yeah. And then one Sunday, I was just like, I don't believe this stuff that I'm singing. And that's probably not good to still be here doing that. And so, I think I really took a hard look at what I had been taught, and what I thought about the world, what I thought about people. Specifically folks that didn't agree with that view of the world, and decided that I couldn't ascribe to something that discounted their whole humanity, and chance for being saved, I guess. So I took a hard turn, and decided I wanted nothing to do with any of it. So I think that's probably where I was at when we first met. I think I didn't necessarily not believe in God. I decided that I didn't know if there was a God or not, and that if the God was the same one that I was raised believing, or that I saw treat people horribly, and you had to jump through all these hoops in order to I guess not burn in hell forever, then that wasn't someone that I cared to devote time to. I think now I think there's something about getting older where you return to kind of a language, or for me, what has happened is I've returned to a kind of language that is familiar to me. I would definitely not call myself a Christian. I wouldn't necessarily, again, even say that I wholeheartedly believe in a Judeo-Christian view of the world. But I guess I just don't have an animosity to it, and I still find I find hope and joy in some of the language, I think, in a way that I didn't before. I I love singing Christmas songs. I think that are very much rooted in a birth of Jesus thing. I think I find joy in yeah, some of the metaphorical language of the church. I find joy in seeing old cathedrals. I find beauty in it, and it points me to a greater something greater than myself. I think the same thing when I look at the stars, but I don't know that I would ascribe it to any particular thing,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense.
When you were describing that, is your impression that like white evangelicals, their Christianity is different than like other ethnicities, evangelical or Christianity?
Um, so one thing that I think the thing that really turned that changed my perspective was I heard I went to this festival. I didn't go to this festival. The band has in the past operated in some the band, when I say the band I mean the collection, has operated in and out of certain religious spaces. I think it started in a more liberal religious space and has now entered into a non-religious space, I guess would be the way I would put it. So one of the places that we were doing this festival, Wild Goose, which is I don't know how to describe Wild Goose. It is a Christian festival that is rooted in a form of acceptance, I guess. It's LGBTQ affirming. They really value providing for the poor. So it's not, if I were growing up, my parents would see that, or then my parents would see that as a place that isn't following scripture. But they are very rooted in we are here to celebrate the love of God through Jesus Christ. So it's very Christian in that sense. And I saw three speakers that impacted me a ton. Otis Moss III, who is a reverend at Trinity Church in Chicago. He spoke and his choir was performing. These are all black pastors. Reverend Barber from the Raleigh area, who has done a lot with the Moral Monday protests that were happening pre-COVID, and has a whole program devoted to providing for the poor and changing our social systems in place to help provide economic equity throughout the state, and that's the country. And then Reverend Michael Waters is a reverend from Texas, and he's a part of this church that's doing work towards racial equity. So I think what I saw was, in specifically the black church, from my perspective, only growing up in a white evangelical space, here are folks that are not just preaching things about helping folks, but they are actually providing systems to promote change, to allow for the words that I heard in my church to actually happen. My church, we never really did any kind of outreach to help poor folks. we never really tried to reach out to communities that were traditionally uh, shat upon in this country. And we never really tried to do anything other than, oh, we're going to give out donuts and we'll do Christmas. We'll like wrap Christmas gifts or whatever. So I think I had been disillusioned by a lot of let's just talk about things, but we don't really care what happens outside of us talking about them on a Sunday morning. And then I saw these people that are actually like living their lives in a way that is for other people and doing that through a church community, which was something I hadn't really seen before. I had always seen we'll talk about it, we'll sing about it on Sundays, but we're not really going to do anything for other folks, even though we say we are. We're not putting any money or effort or time or energy into it. And I always thought, okay, this is just super hypocritical. I don't think Jesus really cares if we have fancy lights and fog machines and we have the best sound system. Why does that matter? And that really bothered me a ton. So then, yeah, I think just seeing these folks in communities doing actual work to help folks made me think about everything in a more in a different way. And now I look at, okay, what are folks actually doing rather than just assigning it's bullshit to a whole group. I do think there's a lot of bullshit. I think there's a lot of folks that just, and this doesn't fall under any kind of white evangelical or whatever, I think, or other ethnicities. I think that it's easy to see who's doing shit and who's not. You just gotta look. And in my experience, or what made me have a different experience was, okay, here's these 3 black leaders doing immense work and immense time and energy into the things that they're preaching about. And that made me realize that there's a lot of people that just phone it in.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to have anything to do with the folks that are phoning it in or have little to give to their communities. That being said, I don't go to church. I don't I don't do anything that I would consider religious. But I think that changed my perspective, I think, a lot.
So do you not think that I mean, I get the sense that you say you don't do anything religious. And you say you don't do anything religious. Do you get the sense at all that I do that like there's a religious fervor on the left side of the spectrum as well that like is as I think being ideological. I think participating in ideologies that kind of participate or place you in this dichotomy, this
Mm-hmm.
spectrum of two opposing ideas. I think when people engage in the opposite side of the traditional religion, when I think they're still kind of engaging in religion, do you see a religious commitment to like the do you see a religious commitment to politics on both sides of the spectrum? I think is what I'm asking you.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think, yeah, I think people, whether they are going to church or not, or are saying it's about God or not, I mean, you can put your beliefs and wrap your identity in a bunch of different things. And I think you can call it leftism or liberalism or whatever. I think there's just as a damaging amount of commitment to that side as there is to right wing or whatever you would conservatism.
Yeah.
I think in general, I think as soon as you stop listening to, for those watching, I just got tattooed, so I'm having a hard time figuring out where to put my arm, and every time I'm like, oh, I can't do that. That hurts.
Do you need an elbow pad or anything?
No, I'm good. I think as soon as you start to discredit other folks' point of view or not listen to them, you, on whatever side, you can start. I think that can then lead to a dangerous place. I think there are certain areas that on either side that I personally definitely am like, okay, I don't care how you landed on the decision to be a racist asshole. You're a racist asshole, and I'm not going to. I appreciate that your circumstance have led you to this, but you also haven't put any work into trying to change it. But I think there are other things that are just more nuanced to the conversation of. I hate that that our country has decided that if you want to be one thing, you have to be all of the things.
Mm-hmm.
And now you also can't accept any kind of truth from another viewpoint. I think that's dangerous.
You think it's unique to America?
I do not think it's unique to America. I think it is seemingly becoming more prevalent everywhere now. I don't know if maybe it's always been this way and I just live now. But I think it's interesting. I mean, I think, looking at other countries' politics, you have the whole Brexit thing and going on over there. You see lots of folks just feeling discontent for whatever reason. I think you see white nationalism in lots of different countries in a way that is... I think people are just trying to figure out where they fit in this global. We now live in a global community. The world is so small, and I think everyone is trying to grab onto whatever they can to feel significant. Maybe.
And what's the context for that? Are you saying that's what these ideologies? That's why people use them?
I don't know. I mean, maybe it is.
Or in reference to the extreme positions people take?
I think in reference to the extreme positions people take. And I think we have just decided that we're gonna, I think social media is a good example we were talking about earlier of here's my whole identity, even though it's only a portion of who I am.
Mm-hmm.
Now I am this whatever I present. And ideologies, I think, have a tendency to do that to folks. If you agree with certain part of a thing, then now you have to be all in, or you can't be a part. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
And I mean, Christianity was this way for me growing up. It was like, okay, if I believe in the Christianity that my church proclaims, then that means I think abortion is completely wrong 100% of the time, and if you do it, you're a murderer. I have to believe that homosexuality is a sin, and that if you are involved in that lifestyle, air quotes, then you are somehow exempt from the love of God, which, again, all of those things to me now are completely and utterly ridiculous. But in order to believe that I was not exempt from the love of God, I was presented with the fact that I had to have those things involved.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I see a lot of that in whether it's conservatism or liberalism or right or left. I think there's an aspect of you have to do all of it or none of it, and it is going to be your whole identity now. And that's sad to me.
Yeah, man. My departure from traditional religion or religion period, what reminds me of that. That's what bums me out, I guess, because like people on either side of this spectrum of like the traditionally religious conservative or the like anti-tradition, anti-conservative liberal left, this war is like totally the same thing. Each side is playing the same exact game. When I departed from religion, I took a very anti position to religion for a very long time, like outspoken about it as hell, and like offended a bunch of people, and they were annoyed with me and stuff, and wrote essays about it. Really borrowed a lot of other people's ideas to just kind of antagonize this thing that I felt had betrayed me in a way. And then I started to notice eventually that I was experiencing the temptation to say other things, like to say things that reflected this anti-identity that was there for the taking if I wanted it. Just ideas that were like totally counter to everything that I thought I believed and all this stuff. That to me is like what feels like is going on right now, is this like really big period of retribution against tradition and conservatism. Not conservatism in the political sense, but more in the functional sense, like what conservatism is for. Like the conservatism everybody has in their psyche. When you stop at a stop sign, when you stop at a red light or slow down at a yellow light, when you don't spend your last $20 on like a nice meal, instead you kind of like hang on to it. All these things are our ability to practice conservatism, and these same principles apply to the way we think about politics. And the antithesis thereof is kind of liberalism, is kind of freedom, is kind of this other thing that says we don't have to put up too many barriers, we don't have to like narrow things down too much, to like we don't have to have control of everything, like everything doesn't have to be controlled. And that anti-position is like what feels like, while it has practical functional purposes, it feels like it is unhinged in a way that's betrayed reality in some ways, and the divide between folks is like getting wider and wider and wider. And so, like you said, I relate to what you said about like the symbolism and the metaphor. Like I after a while I finally had to start seeing that like what I was participating in was kind of foolish, and kind of, it was just as emotional as being like a I don't know, like a foolish fundamentalist evangelical who, I don't know, like them people, Westboro. It's like like that. I was like the atheist version of Westboro. Just like, I'm gonna fucking piss everybody off and stuff,
Right.
in the name of goodness. So I'm not. I don't expect everybody to land in the middle ground. I expect people to have like their tendencies, but that sense of selling off your whole identity. I got a taste of what I could tell that that's what I was like about to do with the left if I didn't sort of like think about that. And I decided not to do that. I decided to kind of like bring it back in and try to have a little bit of balance between these things. But in the arts in particular, it feels a bit like the message that we've been fed for a long time is like all of the threat comes from the right. It comes from politics. It comes from presidents. All of the threat comes from the worst imaginable person that you can imagine being a far right person. And I don't even want to like say those words, but you know who I'm talking about. And yet, I think the control that we talked about in the earlier part, like the secular, the anti attitude about secular art, that when I was coming up, the control of art came from the right. It came from evangelical type people who didn't want you to experience secularism. Now, it feels as though within art there's a pressure to make music that reflects far leftism, because if it's too traditional or something like that, it's kind of not only boring but like verging on offensive. And especially if it goes into the realm where it actually like aligns itself somewhere not in that realm, somewhere that's not in the left of the left, then it's arguably offensive art in some kind of way for existing. So I guess all that to say, I think you and I probably both think of ourselves as non-practicing people when it comes to religion and stuff, but it feels like by engaging in the arts right now in a way that's like a way that's acceptable to the public on a larger scale, or to not just the public but to culture. By engaging in the culture, it's almost like we're participating in the leftist religion of being anti-tradition. Basically, the fact that like a bunch of artists get really condemned by people if they come across as like a person who doesn't represent the far left. You know, if you get some kind of indication that somebody's not progressive enough or somewhat on the right, then they are not accepted by the popular culture. I think that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think that's the danger in most things, is when you stop listening to actual people, and you stop communicating with folks, and you stop having empathy towards other people. I think there can be a danger of now everything has to be this one way, and if it's not, then then for whatever reason it's not worthwhile. I think I think empathy is one of the things that I feel. Let me say it this way. I think when I was kind of like how you mentioned when you had kind of switched to this anti religion or anti stance, I similarly had I'm not going to antagonize, but I am turned away from this whole thing. I'm not saying that it doesn't exist, but for me personally, I don't really give a shit whether it does or doesn't. And if you think it does, well, you'll probably come to the conclusion that I did eventually. What is missing there is a sense of empathy towards another person's life experience and the way that they are interacting with the world. And I think I learned to, one, realize that I was being a prick for assuming that I had come to the only correct conclusion and that everyone else would eventually come to my same conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
And that even thinking that my right conclusion was right is insanely, and I mean that is so fucking stupid. Because I'm not very smart. I'm not smart enough to come up with the right conclusion. Um, but I think, yeah, just having empathy for folks, talking to people outside of your own experience, you might not come to the same conclusions, but at least you can. I think if you, the only way to make any substantial change in anybody is to have an understanding, and this is for anything. If I want to have a better relationship with someone, I need to understand where they're coming from. How did they get there? For us to become better friends, I had to learn about you, who you are as a person, and how you interact with the world, and to just shut off any kind of element of that with someone who doesn't automatically think the same way as you, I think is detrimental to where we'd hope a society would go. I think, right? Like, I think you can't, and that I don't mean to say that the only reason you should do that is to try to change somebody, or to get someone to think the same as you, because 100% of the time, if you try to change the way someone is thinking, that will probably not happen. And I don't know that everyone needs to be changed. I just think that if we could understand, if people that thought differently could at least have empathy towards the other person, I think that would change how they reacted in a lot of ways. Oh, that was a huge hawk just flew by out the window. Sorry, I got distracted.
Hell yeah. I mean,
I don't know.
empathy's cool, man. I think I do notice sometimes that there's been a message for a while among people, particularly younger folks who are like detached from conservatism, that I think they think that empathy is the opposite of hate, the same way that they think good is the opposite of sin. And it's like that's the most important thing, and like anything, but empathy sometimes becomes a word that you can't even aspire toward, because it's like, well, it's funny. John Haidt or whatever his name is, I think did a study about empathy among different demographics, and his findings were basically that it depended on how you define empathy, but his findings were that conservatives could generally more accurately explain where liberals were coming from without demonizing them, where liberals couldn't actually return the favor as often as conservatives could. They couldn't accurately describe what conservatives believe. And I've seen this happen among my own friends. Like what do you think conservatives are actually motivated by? Like, what do you think they would say about themselves? And they can only a lot of times, my friends, because I'm mostly friends with people that are, more left, like probably I am in social terms on the left, but I did stop practicing this because it bothered me. They would say things like they're just motivated by being greedy. I'm like, well, do you think they would say that? Do you think they would walk up to you and say, "Hi, I'm very greedy"? That's what motivates a lot of what I do. There's this whole other, and so anyway, it's ironic that the side of the argument that often is expressing this need for empathy is the side that lacks it in many cases. And I don't know, man. I'm not the person that ought to be saying anything about these things, about like in favor of one group or the other. But the point is that it's like, it seems like when you start defining your enemies outwardly, you're being as much of a religious, like a violently religious zealot as anyone has ever been. And that's what burdens me, is the irrationality of this subject, because people on the left think that they're totally separate from like religious zeal that causes harm. And in fact, I think they're participating in the same exact dynamic, the same exact religious zeal that makes its practitioners, not see other humans as human, but see them as something less than that, and like straw man them down to something that's really easy to light on fire. And the imbalance seems to have shifted lately, at least in the social media world, to the left. And so I don't know. It sounds like we've had pretty similar patterns as far as where our thoughts have gone from like super traditional Christianity towards something more accommodating to other people. And that's the part I like about what you've been talking about is I'm all for accommodating different identity groups and different types of people within society. I don't want anybody to have an unfair shake at all. But I feel like we're just in the midst of an ongoing like punching contest, like a fucking fist fight that I just everybody knows that this is true. This is not a great epiphany on my part, this fist fight. But we have to start talking about this shit in a productive way. I told my buddy Tyler when he came over to the podcast, and I'll elaborate on this a little now, that I think individuality is kind of the opposite of ideology, and I think art is almost the key to that. I think art is kind of the antidote to ideologies that keep us from free thinking and keep us from individuality. And that's why it matters to me to talk about this shit. I think we could talk about it all kinds of different ways. There's artists out there who make art that's just a picture of liberalism. And there's artists that make art that's just confined by conservatism. And so that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about art that when you experience it, you go into it with an empathetic attitude and think, I'm just going to surrender myself to like experiencing somebody else's vision of the world and just like entertain that as a real possibility. Maybe the world looks like the way they see it.
Right.
To do that is to be comfortable enough in yourself to like treat yourself as an individual who doesn't have to look at somebody's artwork as, is it liberal enough or is it conservative enough? Is it too liberal? Is it too conservative? Just fucking let it. I feel like an individual is somebody who just lets art be what it is and tries to experience it as an individual rather than an ideologue, and tries to look at somebody else as an individual rather than a counter ideologue.
Yeah, I agree. I think, like I mentioned, maybe in the first part, kind of being able to look at things and take away the beauty in what was created, rather than some form of perceived intent, or whether or not I'm dissecting every single little thing that the artist was feeling and intending at that particular time. I think there is a beauty in just experiencing the art, and how does that translate to who I am and where I am and the things that I experience and the things that maybe this person experienced, and how can I look at that and say, oh, this is different than my experience, but you created something beautiful. Yeah, I think that's super important, and that's what I would strive to do for other folks, and I hope that's what folks do for things that I create. I hope that, you're always going to bring your own stuff to something, but I hope that you can also set some of that down and look at a different perspective.
Yeah.
And maybe learn from it, maybe just look and say that, hey, that was someone created something that's impressive, and
Yeah.
that is also, I think, valuable.
Yeah, man, and trying to understand the person. I don't know. I hate I don't want to. We've been very serious in this episode, and we haven't laughed as much as we could have. It matters to me, I guess. I don't know, man. I just it just feels like where we are, especially right now after the last 6 years. And I also noticed since COVID too, like it feels like people have retreated to certain parts of their ideology. And I think, and honestly, at the start of lockdown, I really had this thought that was like, oh man, like people are going to unify now, and like people are going to step away from their ideology, and they're going to stop feeling so like politics drives their whole life. This stupid fucking idea that like what is happening in Washington at this moment is like significant to your life more than your neighbors are or whatever. I thought, man, like this is going to really breed some good things. And I honestly think it went the other way. I think like the shock of it all drove people back
Yeah.
toward their tribalism, and that people have become somewhat more tribal. And I guess it's like on some levels I can understand that or whatever, but I have this belief that like part of the reason that the arts are suffering is because people are so looking toward the symbolic fight between like right and left extremes, that they're like forgetting that shit in the middle that makes us feel unified with one another, which is art and conversation and like just being around other individuals, not being surrounded by people of your tribe, but being like looking at people like individuals. And I would just love it if, over some amount of time, if there are more opportunities to like be in a room with strangers and feel unified rather than be in a room by yourself counting how many enemies you have
Right.
via some digital space that tells you that you have too many of them
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I thought, oh, cool. We have the like, in like science fiction and all this stuff. There's like always we just need the one unifying foe to come, and then we'll all like band together and be fine. I was like, cool. We have this thing that is gonna cause us to band together and think of each other more than ourselves, and that didn't happen. But I think what's cool to kind of tie in from the first part of our discussion is that I think that's one of the things I fucking love about live music is we're all in a space. We can have completely different religious beliefs, ideologies. We could be conservative, we can be liberal, but if we like the same fucking band, like we're gonna all be together. And I'm not in the room sitting there going, oh, I wonder if you have the same socioeconomic beliefs that I do, or do you, whatever the fuck it is. It's like, no, we care about singing the words to this song and yelling them as loud as we can with each other.
Yeah.
And we're gonna we're gonna sweat, and we're gonna be in this gross, sticky place, and it's gonna be magical because we are experiencing it together. And as a performer, it's the same. Like I can be on stage and be looking out, and my thought isn't, well, gee, I don't know if these people have the same idea about what the Supreme Court decided. Like, I don't give a fuck what they think about it.
Yeah.
At this particular point in time, all I care about is if we are going to experience the same thing together, and whether or not we're going to have a symbiotic performer audience relationship tonight, and to do my best to help facilitate that. And I think that's, I think that's why it's been a shame, especially in our community, that it's been so hard to have spaces for live music that don't involve being able to play in a giant room. I think that's why live experiences are so important, because we're able to realize that, you know, the people in our community have more in common with us than we'd like to think sometimes.
Yeah, that's right. Most of us that are rational people respond really negatively when we encounter violence,
Mm-hmm.
when we encounter unfairness, and when we encounter like people being rude to one another or judging people for stupid shit or whatever. And it's like, that's real life. And these decorations that we turn it into about, and don't get me wrong, these problems that these dynamics are attached to are really, really serious problems about what culture is and about what like government is and what governing consists of. These are super serious things, but they're not so simple that we can just boil people down to like these bullshit categories and then like consider everybody enemies, when we have these opportunities instead to relate to one another.
Yeah. Just go to more shows.
Go to more shows and the world will be a better place.
I 100% believe that.
Anywho, I think we have reached the end of this conversation for today. Yeah, man, come on some more. And we'll talk about more things.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about songwriting today.
No, yeah.
And that's fun.
Yeah, it is. So I guess when you come back, we'll have to talk about songwriting.
Yeah.
And
that would be a fun conversation, I think, for us.
Yeah. All right,
we have
cool.
different approaches.
We do, yeah. So does your buddy and my buddy Corey. I've been learning about his approach. He's interesting. Maybe we should all three get together sometime and talk about songwriting.
That'd be weird.
Yeah.
I want to know Corey's approach to songwriting, and maybe I don't.
Yeah.
But
it's very cool, actually.
He's very good at it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, honestly, the podcast has gotten away from the craft of songwriting, or this, I guess I should say the channel, because the podcast isn't particularly about songwriting, but when I have songwriters on, such as yourself, it is something I want to talk about. And yeah, we pretty much, we filled up the time, I would say, with other stuff. So that's a really good reason for us to get back together again soon.
Means I get to come back.
Yeah. Well, good. All right. Well, this has been Josh Ling on Red House. Thank you for coming over.
Thank you for letting me drink while we were doing this.
Absolutely.
And also take a pee break.
Absolutely. All right, then. And that'll do it.
We just finger gunned.